Hey guys, Sean at Top 5 Fit, and I want to go over a fairly uncomfortable event that took place in my facility the other night. The members who come in pretty frequently to actually, get a decent workout in and talk about good training tips, good nutritional tips, well, they all revolted on me one night and decided to talk about cake. They all love cake, and it actually all got started by one individual who decided his diet was going to be avocados and cake. That's all he wanted to eat for basically, the rest of his life, which sounds fine because they're both delicious, but we can't really do that. But being a former 315-pound kid, I know the lures of cake, and cake is delicious, and we need to come up with a way that we can enjoy cake-like items but not necessarily destroy our diet in the process. So today what we've done is we've put together a little bit of a man cake recipe. Some of you may have seen similar recipes online, the 1-minute coffee cup muffin cake kind of thing. This is a slight variation on that with some key ingredients that are a little bit more, I guess, designed to keep you in line with proper nutrition instead of just loading your body with sugar. So let's take a look. All right, so this is a fairly easy recipe to follow. And when I say recipe, I use that term very loosely. I measure everything in terms of tablespoons and teaspoons. Now, when you're reading other recipes that are very similar to this in nature, the 1-minute coffee cup muffin, that kind of thing. They're very specific on what you're using as far as how much almond flour, how much of the flaxseed, meal, that kind of thing. The only thing that I'm very specific on when it comes to do not use more than this and do not use too little is the baking powder. That's going to be an important thing. Too much of this stuff and the muffin and ultimately the cake tastes horrible. So this is the one thing where we're going to be very strict with how much we actually put in. The rest of the items, you can kind of play it by ear just a little bit and ultimately season to taste. You can add a little bit more almond flour, you can add less. It all kind of depends on what you're trying to get out of each one of the muffins. So let's go ahead and get started with this. I chose the Red Mill almond flour, super fine. I go after the super fine because if it's any chunkier, it has a habit of breaking apart when you actually try to take it out after cooking, and then it's just a big crumb pile. So if you go with the almond flour, you want to make sure and go a little bit finer. So we go ahead and cut this open. And with this, we're going to grab our tablespoon, and we've got 3 soup bowls, coffee mugs, whatever you really want to call them, kind of lined up here, fairly heaping tablespoon. 1 in each. And then we're going to go back and hit that again for a grand total of 2 tablespoons in each one of these cups. You want to try not to use too much more than that, especially considering that's how much space we've got left for the rest of the ingredients. So if you put too much in, you're just going to run out of room, and we still have to be able to stir all of these ingredients up at one point. So let's go ahead and put this over here and out of the way. Next, we're going to go after the flaxseed meal. You can get in your organic section of your grocery store, if you don't want an entire bag like this, flaxseed meal is pretty readily available, and you can find it ground up and get much smaller amounts. This is a recipe that I tend to come back to pretty consistently, so that's why I went after these 2 sizes, because I'll ultimately make more and I don't want to have to go to the store every time I want to make them. Now, the flaxseed meal, of course, is going to add essential fatty acid. It's also going to add a wonderful fiber component to this. With the almond flour, we actually took care of a great deal of the protein component. So what we'll do here is go after 1 tablespoon of that flax meal right on top of the almond. Okay, next we're going to go after the baking powder. Now, this is what we talked about being very accurate as far as making sure you're not using too much or too little. You really only want the tip of a teaspoon's worth of this in each container. So literally take your teaspoon and stick it in and just get enough on the end. Any more than that and it tends to be real bitter in taste. And that's all you really need to actually get these things to bind together and to give you a muffin feel. So again, just a little bit, tip of the teaspoon, not too much more than that, not too much less. Next, we're going to go after some Hershey's cocoa powder. I went after the 100% cacao special dark. You will note that there's no sugar in this at all. So when you're actually talking about trying to add flavor to your muffins, you can get a pretty deep and rich chocolatey flavor in there without jacking the sugar count. So this is kind of what we go after to use. Now, very strong tasting, so we do not need to add a lot to each one of these. So again, maybe half of a teaspoon at best. Just enough to kind of cover up the pile of baking powder that you just put in there. Next, we need to add a little bit of sweetener. Now, I tend to go after nature's sweetener, honey, for most of the dishes that I put together. It's just easy. I don't have to worry about whether or not it's too sweet or not sweet enough, and I kind of know exactly how much to add every time I make either one of these muffins or any one of the recipes that I use it in. So once we take off that protective seal, we're just going to go ahead and squirt maybe a teaspoon on top of that. Now we only add a teaspoon or so of the honey because we're still going to add protein powder to this. And there's a natural sweetener right in with, well, it's basically stevia. It's not that natural, but at least it's better than high fructose corn syrup. That's in with the protein powder. So that's also going to add to the sweetness of the overall muffin. So that's why we don't go too crazy with the honey. And it also helps keep the sugar count under control. Next, we're going to go ahead and get the protein powder mixed in. I like to go right back to my tablespoon, and I'll go after 1 full tablespoon of the protein powder right on top. And again, we mentioned that this has a sweetener in it, so you're going to get all kinds of flavor from this. Once it's all mixed together and done. Next, we're going to go ahead and add some nuts for extra fiber, essential fatty acid, and texture. I don't know about you, but whenever I bite into a muffin, I would like a little bit of texture besides just the muffin there, and this kind of adds a really healthy way to do that. I like to mix the walnuts in and then actually put the slivered almonds on top just so you get a little bit of an appearance effect there as well. These small bags work out great. If it's not something that you're going to make on a daily basis, then there's no reason to get the giant container of walnuts. These little $1 and $2 packs will actually last a couple of muffins because you really don't use that much. I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit just on the top there. And that actually, I've got about 3/4 of the bag left over, so you can see where that's going to last you quite a while. Next, we'll go ahead and add in the eggs. Now, the jury's kind of out as to whether or not you want to add the entire egg or just the egg white. I have a tendency to add the whole egg. I'm not scared of egg yolks. I kind of like the fat that they offer, and I think it's a great combination with the fat that the flaxseed offers. So we'll crack that, go ahead and pour that egg right on top. Try not to be too messy. Right. And then lastly, we want to add a little bit of oil. And again, this helps to kind of bind all the material together and get the muffin actually out of the container. So what we'll do is go ahead and get this open. Glad they make peanut oil child-proof. And then we're going right back to our teaspoon. You want to make sure and hold this over top so you don't spill the oil everywhere. And now we're ready to stir. Make sure and take your time when you're stirring this up. By the time it's all done, it's going to look like thick pancake batter. You want to make sure and scrape the corners as well. Sometimes the flaxseed and almond flour has a tendency to kind of hide in the corners, and you don't want to end up with a dusty corner after you finish cooking. So make sure and get the fork all the way down to the bottom of the container so that you're mixing all of that meal in. So what we've got when it's all said and done is basically a chocolate, high fiber, high protein muffin. Took the liberty of sprinkling some of those almond slivers on top and then drizzling honey across. If you have any questions or comments or want to see more recipes like this, feel free to throw some comments in the message box below, and don't forget to subscribe for new coming videos. Thanks again.